Hi, I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. Joining us now is Brian Trautschold, the COO and co founder of Ambition. This is Brian's first of two sessions with us. This one's about the internal contest with a sales team. We know they're a relatively common thing, but they're rarely done properly. And today, Brian will cover how you can run the perfect sales contest and change your team forever. Now, let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am Brian Trautschold. I'm the co-founder and COO at Ambition. We are a sales gamification and coaching platform. I'm super thrilled to join my friend Howard Brown and the Ring DNA team for the entire Selling Forward digital event. We're all getting used to this new format, and so I'm excited to be here and talk about how to run better, or maybe one day perfect, sales contests. A little context. Ambition, our company, is really, this is near and dear to our heart. Our software is used by some of the most forward-thinking sales organizations, as well as, dozens of Fortune 500 companies to maximize rep potential and increase their effectiveness. And sales contests are a useful tool for that. We're going to start out with doing a little setting of the stage and talking about what is gamification. I won't insult your intelligence, but I do want to be clear when we're talking about, because I'm going to say that word a lot. And when I say it, what I'm really talking about are kind of three broad categories: contests, leaderboards, and prizes or incentives. I'll give you some stats shortly, but I want to run you through a little bit more of what those things mean, because I don't think there's a sales team that I've ever run into that doesn't utilize some aspect of gamification. The reason is that, whether they have contests, whether they use leaderboards, whether they're giving out prizes, that's not really what we're talking about. Really what we're talking about is creating healthy competition with contests, providing clear visibility with leaderboards and reporting, and building positive feedback loops with recognition, oftentimes as powered by prizes and incentives. I believe when utilized in concert, all three of these things alongside a consistent coaching program, sales leaders can develop a really incredible culture that impacts rep success and, importantly, is going to ensure that reps stick around your organization for the long term. Okay, so you might not believe me, but luckily our marketing team has been able to, dig into a lot of stats here, and we practice what we preach. And so happy to walk through, some of the things that you can impact, that we've seen impacted by utilization of gamification in the workforce. And the first is that gamification impacts learning. My 5-year-old could tell you this. I think every lesson and learning workbook has some level of gamification for them. The good news is that the effect doesn't wear off with age. If employers can find a way to make work feel like a fun game, or at least somewhat a game mechanics, they can increase employees' ability to learn new skills by 40%. That's pretty big. If you're like me, it's hard to learn new stuff. It's hard to learn a new process, and the ability to add a layer of fun to that can drastically improve people's adoption of that. And I'm no scientist, no doctor, but what happens when you're playing games is it light up the hippocampus. I'm told that's part of the brain, and that affects where you store memory. In addition to that, employees can really benefit from gamification. I think this is, new employees can really benefit from gamification. I think this is critical because we're entering a new normal. Everyone's talking about it, especially part of Selling Forward, where a lot of people, especially sales reps, are probably going to be onboarded or primarily onboarded for their new roles almost entirely remotely. And research shows that new employees are much more likely to be engaged when their training is gamified. So maybe you're not hiring people right now, but I bet you will in the future. And by increasing that employee engagement, you can have a much more effective rep or a salesperson much sooner. And that's huge for not only will this person work out in your organization, but are they going to feel like they're working out in your organization? And here's a core belief of ambition backed up by real data. Almost 90% of people asked in a survey said that when a task at work is gamified, they feel more competitive, they're more eager to complete it. And this is part of the idea that by creating some excitement, creating some fun, you can increase productivity, engage productive sellers are what everyone wants. And the difference between that quiet, boring sales floor, that stereotype, and one that has a lot of energy is that people are engaged and they're having fun and they're communicating. And we have to change what we think about that in this new, maybe remote first or more remote forward world. But it's more important than ever to create that excitement and that engagement, which ultimately can lead to this productivity and task completion. And this one may seem like it's obvious, but people actually like their jobs when it's more fun. It's shocking, but fun actually works. And 80% of people enjoy using gamification software at work. I think that is there's been some generational rifts in that, and certain people say, "Oh, this is silly," or "This is not meant to be in the workforce." But if you follow any of the stats on people playing games, whether it's on their phone or at home or with their friends, it's not just young people, it's not just what kids do, it's what a lot of people do. And when we can take that same type of energy and engagement to the workplace, people have more fun and they enjoy it. All right, but when it comes down to the brass tacks, and as a company leader, I think about this stuff too. Does gamification actually work? Does it actually get the results? Remember when I talked about productivity a second ago? We see this with our own customers, and we'll come back to how this happened later, so don't bail on me. But gamification in sales specifically moves the needle in a ton of different ways. And just one customer, we'll talk about this in a minute, but they increased their sales activities by almost 30%. Specific metric, meetings scheduled, they increased by over 30%. And an effectiveness metric, which this is really key, they were able to convert at a higher rate to sales qualified leads. They increased that conversion from sales accepted leads to sales qualified leads by 43%. And that's about creating fun and energy focused into specific metrics for the sales team. Last but not least, contests and gamification are pretty popular. We released a survey last year, and 75% of sales leaders said that they were actively running sales contests. And what's concerning, well, that's great, and we love that at Ambition, where we saw a tool that helps them do that. What was concerning is that the types of contests and the results of those contests, or the effectiveness of those contests, were sometimes questionable. And that's why we have a bombastic title that you guys registered for. But we're going to talk about how to make a better contest and how to make these contests have better results for your team. So what does the perfect sales contest look like? The first asterisk is not all sales contests are created equal, and at different times you need to employ different tactics. But if you want to improve your ROI, if you want to improve the output of your team, you can utilize these tips tomorrow. And there's 4 kind of keys that I think that a sales manager, sales leader should be thinking about when they're trying to design a contest. Not that this is overly, complex, but I think it's something that in a few minutes, as you think about what you're trying to get your people to do, the behavior, the activity, the outcomes that you're looking for, you really should be thinking, am I checking the box next to each of these? So does your contest, does your incentive directly correlate to the most important metrics and or your overall sales process? There's a lot of times we see contests which are distracting to the rep. They're pulling them into a different direction than the overall sales objective. The next is it reinforcing what's happening in the ongoing management and coaching of your reps. This happens sometimes, or the negative happens sometimes, where VP of sales launches a contest and it really counters what's being done at the ground level, what people are focused on day to day. And that disconnect creates confusion, creates frustration, and it leads to ineffectual contests. Another key is, does it contribute to your team's overall development? This is it going to power their long-term success? Skill development, is it going to lead to them closing more deals in the future if it's a seller? Is it going to lead to more pipeline if it's someone in demand generation? You just want to make sure that they're not spinning their wheels for something that ultimately is not going to help them. And last but not least, is the contest right size for the objective or the goal? And we'll unpack that in a little bit, but it's a Goldilocks principle. You're kind of fitting the contest, the incentive, the targets to a similar level of time, of metrics, and who's involved with it. Otherwise, you're going to get disjointed contests that don't end up where you want to be. And so let's talk about a couple of, what we've documented as 3 different categories or types of sales gamification contest formats that are really successful and, I think can be utilized in tandem. We'll talk about that quite a bit to deliver results for your team. The first, and this is the most common, I think anyone in sales has been a part of something like this. We're calling it the Blitz. It's very commonly used. I would say it is very often misused. Unfortunately, many sales leaders spin up a contest because the energy seems low, or it is Friday afternoon and they haven't heard from the team in a bit. It's all harder right now because you're remote, but this used to be you'd walk by the floor and it was quiet, and so let's go get a call contest going for the next hour. And that can be really powerful. And so, the reason the Blitz is useful is that if you want to drive a short-term result, if you want to change the energy on your sales team, this is very common. The key is that you want to make it very clear. You want to give people visibility into why we're doing it and how you're going to score people. It's a very quick, hard-hitting, let's get this done, let's see if we can get results. Our team does these multiple times per week on a variety of different KPIs. Very quick, we sync before, we sync after. What did we get done? What did we learn? What didn't go right? And we give out some incentives and some recognition. But we use it as part of a broader strategy, not just throwing blitzes at people every day to get their job done. The next we call the sprint. Sprint's a little bit longer than the Blitz. These are things that I believe are really about creating good habits and creating the right type of behavior in your sales organization, and kind of giving periodic high focus to different metrics or a variety of metrics. And comes from something I remember from years ago, but from reading a book about habits, and there's tons of research on how long it takes to create a habit. I think the consensus is that at minimum it takes about 3 weeks to create a habit that's likely to stick. And so in a sprint type of contest, it's not as quick as that couple hours on the sales floor or a couple hours of cold calling. It's a little bit longer, it's a little bit more nuanced, and the sales leader should be communicating that this is about getting to some specific objective. Even though we're going to compete over who can do the most or create the highest quality pipeline or make the most, accept the most new meetings over the next 3 weeks, it's for a bigger purpose. And so you really want to make it clear that you're focusing on the outcome of these metrics. What are these metrics drive in the long term, so that your reps kind of build that into their day-to-day flow and their day-to-day focus, and that's going to change their behavior and create a habit for them, more long term. Last but not least, our marketing team calls this the big kahuna, because I don't know that there's a better a better way to describe it. But it's a lot more thoughtfully, strategically set up competition. And we see these typically get launched at the beginning of a quarter, maybe even sometimes for second half of the year initiative to change up the performance and to really refocus people on a variety of deliverables. But the through line is that typically you're talking about multiple metrics that are going to be scored in this, and those KPIs metrics are highly correlated to the business success. And so once again, to use that example, maybe it's the second half of the year, H1 didn't go as well as you had hoped. You're behind on closed won revenue. You're behind on pipeline created. You're behind on opportunities. And so to create a really cohesive, focus, other than obviously you're going to be talking about it in your coaching, you're going to be talking about it on your weekly team meetings, but an example may be that you create some small teams, and each week teams are competing with one another in the org to create the most of new opportunities, pipeline dollars created, and close won deals with a scoring model in there. The goal is that every week people are showing up excited, they're tuning back in, they're engaged, and they're pushing themselves a little bit harder because of the competitive interaction to go get those things and to go deliver for the longer term contest. So we have the Blitz, hyper short, fast muscle twitch, get it going, collaborate at the end, see how it went. You got the sprint, a little bit longer. It's going to be a couple weeks, maybe a month. And then we have the big kahuna, but a little bit more complex. Maybe it's part of a bigger strategic shift or focus. And all of these can be layered on top of each other. They can all be happening simultaneously, but you should understand that each have kind of a different reaction from the rep to the contest format and the contest type. So those are the three categories that we've kind of broken out. If you pick the right contest, you should be picking it for the right objective and making sure those things are aligned. There are some really common, easy to fix mistakes that sales leaders fall into. And part of it is because a lot of times the contests are just reactive. But here are some common mistakes. We'll talk about each of these very quickly that people stumble on. One is that the why behind the contest is not clear to you, the sales rep. The next is that the what is not clear. Another is that competition metrics, standings, scoring is not visible or is not updated in a real-time fashion. There's nothing worse than working your tail off to win some incentive, to beat your fellow teammates, and then you don't get the scoring, you don't get the results for 2 weeks, and you've completely tuned out. That loses a ton of momentum. It's ineffectual. Another one is that, and this is very common, contests are only designed for the best reps, the A players. We see that a lot. That's one, those reps should win some stuff. They should be getting a lot, but we'll talk about how you can get the broader middle 70% of your organization engaged. And last, the prizes aren't fun. The prizes are boring. It doesn't have to be spending money. I don't believe in crazy expensive incentives, but I do believe, and I think the research backs up, that incentives do have to get people's attention. So let's walk through those super quickly. Know why. As Simon Sinek says, it all starts with why. Sales contests should too. If you are not clearly communicating the reason that we're having an incentive for this, why the metric or whatever scoring is going into this, it's just doing something to get it done because a manager's telling you. And when we're running a call blitz, for example, we run call blitzes because we know that calls are our best medium to set qualified meetings. And so we want to do it as a team. We want to get as much feedback at the end of it as possible. It creates a ton of interaction. And that's our strongest channel. The reality is that doing quite a few calls is hard. And so you've got to figure out a way to make it fun and competitive. And we try to reward those winners week in, week out. So you've got to talk about the why you're doing something, and it's got to be related to the next thing. It's got to be related to rep success. And so you want to create the buy-in that by doing this contest, by participating, competing, this helps you, the sales rep. If you are successful in, making the calls, scheduling meetings, creating new opportunities, those are things that are going to obviously help you in your success as a salesperson at your company. And so you want to make sure the buy-in is clear, which starts with why. Next, visibility. I tell this story a lot, and the reality is it's still the same for a lot of organizations. The first sales org that I was a part of, about a decade ago, when we would run contests, which was all the time, they would physically print out the standings at the end of the week, and they put them on the wall on a big printed piece of paper. And so during the week, while we're doing a variety of different contests on calls, on opportunities created, on pipeline creation, you had no idea where you stood. And so if you're running a month-long contest, you kind of have four little glimpses into seeing how well you're doing. That is a very ineffective way to run a contest. And if you've got friends who've got a Fitbit or an Apple Watch and they're checking their activity or they're looking at their steps, you can see how impactful it is for people to have that real-time course correction. Oh, I'm off on my steps today. Let me go walk around the block. Oh, I'm not where I want to be this week. Let me go do something. I even had a friend who he's got a Peloton, which I don't have yet, but he's posting on stuff. He's posting like where he ranks, and right after he does his ride, he's like, oh, I got in X percentile. So it's really impactful for people to see in real time where they stand and how they did against their peers. A players only. This is really tough because, as a sales leader, you want to have your top 5%, top 10% really plugged in. But you have to create opportunity for the other folks to shine. One way of doing this is taking a really strategic view and saying we're going to do more team versus team contests. And so instead of just having top performers all competing, it is let's get a team of folks and hopefully we build some collaborative tissue between the top and the folks who are not quite at the top. Another way is to create contests and incentives that are on multi-metrics, especially multi-metrics that may not just be about the end goal, closed won revenue or something like that. You may need to look at what are some key metrics in the process that maybe that middle 70 or 60% who are still trying to create themselves into a great rep are more focused on right now. Because even in our org, the best sellers don't always do the most activity. They've gotten so great and they're so skillful that they don't have to do as many calls. They may not have to set as many meetings. But the folks on the way up, they do. And so you can kind of adjust your metrics to highlight some more of the effort of those folks in the middle 60 to 70% so that they're bought in, especially on these longer term sprints and bigger type of incentives. Last but not least, people bring this up all the time, reps bring this up all the time, is that the incentives aren't exciting. And I think this is going to be a big challenge, especially in the remote world, because a lot of times things are, here's a flight voucher or the winner of this big incentive gets to go on a trip. Those things we're going to have to get really creative on. As our marketing team says, we're all adjusting. One thing that I feel is underappreciated and is very inexpensive is recognition and access to leadership. It's something that teams and companies can do and offer. And if you're a seller who's trying to move up, who wants to move up even to the next role, whether that's from an account executive to a senior account executive or a mid-market seller to an enterprise seller, being able to have access to a leader, the VP of sales, the CRO, the CEO sending them an email, those are things that really matter. And hopefully when we get back in the office, maybe that becomes a lunch or a coffee or something. But even scheduling a 15-minute call to talk about the appreciation for someone's hard work to win a contest. It doesn't cost a lot. It does take some creativity and time, but it's very effective, especially for folks who are not your A players, maybe not constantly being recognized. So I mentioned that we talk about, does this stuff really work? Our friends at Highspot, an amazing sales enablement company, big advocates of folks who are in that space, and Highspot specifically. Recently, they switched to Ambition, and talk through like some of the reasons that the gamification was effective for them. They needed a way to, really standardize reporting across 11 segmented teams doing different things, and to simplify and improve the performance of those groups. They did a combined strategy. And so a lot of times when we're, handing people a product, we're really handing them a toolkit and expertise to utilize it. And what I think is interesting about Highspot is they took that toolkit, they took the idea of these different types of contests, and they started to create very, very specific incentives, all aligned on, improving the performance of these different teams and creating better visibility simultaneously. A huge thing that they did as they got metric visibility for everyone is they set up scorecards, which increased the CRM adoption, increased the utilization and the data hygiene, which overall for a leader at Highspot, I'm sure increased the visibility into that performance. So when they came to Ambition, they were seeking that system to unify 11 teams, from sales development all the way to sellers. And let's talk about some of the contests really quickly. One, they started doing a Monday morning Zoom Blitz. And so they're focused on points-based contests. Some people just want to say, how many meetings did you get? Or how many dollars did you add to the pipeline? They're doing points per their meetings, which is great. And they've got two different metrics here, which is nuance that I think is important. 25 points per meeting scheduled, 10 points for actual conversation. So they're getting into the why behind there. So this is 1 hour Monday morning. The prize is just bragging rights, which I love. That's good. And why it works, they use their words. When you work remotely from home, it can be tough to get out of the weekend mindset, launch into the work week mindset. And so Monday morning, they're boom, right into a blitz. They've got clear metrics. They understand why it impacts their success as reps to get these meetings scheduled, to have these conversations. And, that launches them out of the gate. 2, team versus team. I talked about this a couple times, but I really think it's becoming a popular thing, especially as people go remote and reps are less likely to see each other, unfortunately. The setup here is, once again, multi-metric, 1 point per dial, 10 points per conversation, 2 points for a voicemail, 50 points for sales qualified lead. What's interesting is this is on the flip side. So 1 hour on Friday afternoon, free lunch for the winning team. And you can see that they're highlighting the most points or the most priority on sales qualified leads, which are obviously the most valuable to the business. The why is aligned, but they're also giving people points for the hard work, for making the dials, for leaving voicemails, for having a conversation, which I think means they're calling the right type of people. And so they're really aligned. Like, the business is getting what it wants, sales qualified leads. The reps are getting credit for doing the hard work. And, best case scenario, you're doing this team v team. So it's not just, one rep skewing the whole thing because they can line up, a bunch of sales qualified meetings in that hour. It's got to be a team wide effort. Last but not least, very quickly, Final Four team challenge. I love stuff like this. I love when people tap into the Masters or March Madness or playoff style brackets, but they have teams go head to head. Once again, they've got multi-metrics on a different point scale. And look at this. They've got 1 hour competition, team v team. The winner announces to the next day, 1v1. And that's super fun. Like, that gets people really engaged, showing up for work like, oh my gosh, I've got to beat so-and-so. I've got to get, the person I onboarded with who's now on another team. I want to show them up. And I think that's really fun. I enjoy that as a sales leader because it gets the personality of our companies to shine through and people to trash talk a little bit in Slack or on email or whatever. And you can see that the results are there for them too. Just 2 months after implementing scorecards and the pacing alerts and the gamification, Highspot increased activities by almost 30%. Once again, meetings scheduled by over 30%, and a much higher increased conversion rate to sales qualified leads by 43%. So taking a combined approach, adding it all together, delivering results for their sales organization. We'd love to help you with this at Ambition. Once again, ambition.com. Check out our sales contest templates. Very easy, sales contest templates. And, check us out. We're thrilled to be part of Selling Forward, and we hope to help you run better sales contests, whether it's in your office or remote, wherever you're working right now. Please let us help. We know it's a tough time, and keep selling. Thanks.